Oklahoma.
Mr. Consent be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, several have talked about tragic attack on him in your and all remember at the time. I remember showing up to seeing the people involved, families of firemen who lost. Tragic is that I just want to ask the question out after 11 took years ago today that those, if they had to send a weapon over states, would do that. I look back so wistfully at the Cold War. About it was in the United States, predictable, but it's concepts. So assured it was somewhat meaningful, very effective. It's not effective because you're dealing or want to die. It's a different altogether. And I have to say on this year, on this day, that back about Obama's first in 4 years, he did I thought to our military, and I put that on the floor times, way with the generation vehicle, the 22, our lift capacity 17, did away with the system. One thing I think we're aware of that, but that a lot of people are aware of, that same budget. Way with Poland of a ground scepter. Now, a lot of people don't remember because this is ago. If you think at the decision in this country that we had to ourselves Iran capability of a weapon sent all to the United States. I'm very happy to say that coming from we have ground scepters in a lot of the way down in California. Anything coming, I feel very, but coming from action, coming on the case. And we read some 6 years ago that we're going to have some base centers that care of them from first. I was negotiation, a good friend in the seat. I both Poland, Czech Republic, to be willing to be our side, and they to be take on Russia, who didn't have this and base interest in Poland to do anything coming direction. That was the president. He with that. They say that maybe not an accurate assessment, but 2000 NE intelligence. Develop an inter-missile capability by 15. Less than your DOD in its 2010 run Iran's. They sent to remember this verse, and I'm out from that. With for instance, Iran probably intercontinental missile catching the United States by 2000. Totally with what in place third Obama administration Pit missile and the European adaptive approach with incremental development of sea and land and so forth. I think one thing is that M3-1B is something short range defense. The S Block 2 is short and medium. The one that would place capability of the ground scepter in would be M3-2B. Now that's concept drawing board. Here we know Iran is going to have capability 2000 and the deployment 2000 leaves the United States of America and protected 5 years. Unprotected. There is some protection there about the ships. However, it's but the president, the number of ships, capability of miscarry, and where it is still, I think, protected. Not, but also now word to the in April 12 report a few months ago, on Iran, which states in that report, Iran has the quality and effects of existence for sea. It's submit pay Iran be capable of testing continental missile by year 19. Seneca, the defense secretary, minutes he's this year that he believed Iran would be able to nuclear weapon in about and then them 1 years and put a delivery vehicle again 2015 a fight between when our intercept operation and that field nuclear so capable and this year's best president cut 50 million THAAD system and 36 chapters and to the THAAD fire unit from $970 million in Egypt. And again, the system place to replace the base inter Poland. The under SC procure would be delayed and procure 2973 would be interceptor 40. In other words, cutting down dramatically capability. At the same time, there can be anyone said that in 15 is a realistic they would have the capability of just the weapon to deliver them. The president to program his ships budget at full. In other words, move them around. Good rockability. I've been supportive of the system. Cutting down those would be there just action Europe protection of states. At the Obama's infamous Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, we remember well, the 26th of this year, President Obed, and now not knows that these open on issues, particularly missiles. This can be, but it's for him about the President Vladimir Putin to base words Obama space. This is election for my election more ability. Well, I'd have to that now about years ago today. Tragedy, 3,000 people were immediately in that horse attack. That's the same question. A few minutes is out, and anyone. The person who do this that would on a orchestrated a terrorist attack would they using a deliver some type of vehicle to the United States. And I can't imagine one believe that a possible tragic 3,000 killed what? It's take much sedation type of a major American city. Wouldn't be talking 3,000 about 100,000 3 million. So I think this day, the 11th century, need to take that we years ago, looking at the not ourselves, not my 20 grandkids, but we can ourselves, and we need quickly care of the horrible gap, and it's coming from with that, Madam President. Yield.